Hey everyone, I need to get something off my chest. I never thought I'd be the one writing one of these, but here I am. My name is Jeff, and my wife, Lisa, has been driving me crazy lately. We've been married for 10 years, and I always thought we had a solid relationship. We met in college, fell in love fast, and got married right after graduation. Everything seemed perfect, or so I thought. Lisa is a social butterfly. She's always been outgoing, making friends everywhere she goes. It never bothered me much because I trusted her. We have a group of friends we hang out with regularly, and among them, there are these four guys: Mike, John, Ryan, and Steve. They've been friends with us for years, and we've always had a good time together. Lately, though, something's been off. Lisa has been spending a lot more time with them, particularly without me. She says they're just a fun bunch and that I'm overthinking things, but I can't help but feel like there's more to it. She's been going out almost every night, coming back late, and often smelling like she's showered somewhere else. When I ask, she just laughs it off or gets defensive, saying she just wants some space and time to herself. It all started to feel weird when she began lying about little things, like where she was or who she was with. I'd catch her in small lies and she'd just brush them off as no big deal. I didn't want to be the paranoid husband, but her behavior was starting to get under my skin. I tried talking to her about it, but every time it turned into a huge fight, with her accusing me of not trusting her. Despite my growing suspicions, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that our marriage was strong enough to withstand whatever was happening. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. I could feel it in my gut. And as much as I tried to ignore it, the feeling just wouldn't go away. It all came to a head last weekend. Lisa told me she was going to a friend's house for a little get-together. She didn't mention whose house, and I didn't ask, trying to avoid another argument. But something felt off, so I decided to follow her. Yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but I had to know what was going on. I followed her car discreetly and watched as she pulled up to our friend Mark's house. It was strange because Mark and his wife were out of town. I knew that for a fact because we had talked about it just a few days ago. I parked a little ways down the street and walked up to the house, trying to stay out of sight. I peered through a window and my heart sank. There was Lisa, with Ryan, one of the four guys she'd been hanging out with so much. They were in the living room, and it was clear they weren't just friends. I watched as they laughed, flirted, and then started kissing. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My wife, the woman I loved, was having an affair right in front of my eyes. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. I wanted to storm in there and confront them, but I held back. I needed to gather my thoughts. I took a few deep breaths and decided to catch them in the act, so there would be no way Lisa could deny it. I walked back to my car, waited a few minutes to calm down, and then knocked on the door. Lisa opened the door, her face instantly turning pale when she saw me. "Jeff, what are you doing here?" she stammered. "I could ask you the same thing," I replied, my voice shaking with anger. "Where's Ryan?" Before she could answer, Ryan appeared behind her, shirtless and looking guilty as hell. "Hey man, this isn't what it looks like," he started. "Save it," I snapped. "I saw everything." Lisa tried to defend herself, but her words were just noise to me. I couldn't focus on anything she said. All I knew was that my worst fears had been confirmed. My wife was cheating on me, and I had caught her red-handed. I turned around and walked back to my car, ignoring her frantic pleas and apologies. I needed to get out of there, to clear my head and figure out what to do next. As I drove away, my mind was racing. How long had this been going on? How many times had she lied to me? I pulled over to the side of the road and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel. I knew my marriage was over. There was no coming back from this. The trust was gone, shattered into pieces, and I knew I had to make a decision, one that would change my life forever. After I caught Lisa with Ryan, I knew I had to confront her properly. I couldn't let her continue to lie and cheat without facing the consequences. The drive home was a blur. My mind was racing, my heart pounding. When I walked into the house, Lisa was already there, sitting on the couch, looking like a mess. Her eyes were red and puffy from crying, but I didn't feel any sympathy. "Jeff, please, let me explain," she started, her voice trembling. "Explain? What's there to explain, Lisa? I saw everything," I replied, my anger barely contained. "How long has this been going on?" She looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "A few months," she admitted quietly. "A few months?" I repeated, stunned. "And you just thought you could keep lying to me, sneaking around with Ryan and God knows who else?" "It's not like that," she insisted, her voice rising. It just happened. I didn't plan for this. Didn't plan for this? I scoffed. So what, you just tripped and fell into his arms? And what about Mike, John, and Steve? Are they part of this too? Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. My stomach churned with disgust. Unbelievable, I muttered. You've been cheating on me with 4 different guys and you expect me to believe it just happened? You're unbelievable, Lisa. She started crying again, but this time I didn't care. I love you, Jeff, I really do. But things got complicated and I didn't know how to handle it. Complicated? I shouted. Complicated is trying to figure out what to have for dinner. This is betrayal. You've destroyed our marriage, Lisa. How could you? She tried to reach out to me, but I pulled away. Don't touch me, I warned. I can't even look at you right now. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I never wanted to hurt you. Well, you did, I said coldly. And now we have to figure out what to do next. I spent the rest of the night on the couch, unable to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Lisa and Ryan together, and it tore me apart. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. The reality of the situation was settling in, and I knew I had to make a decision. Lisa tried to talk to me again, but I shut her down. There's nothing more to say, I told her. I need some time to think. She nodded, looking defeated. I understand, but please, Jeff, don't give up on us. I didn't respond. I couldn't. My heart was shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be put back together. The trust, the love, everything we had built over the years was gone. And I was left wondering if it was ever real to begin with. After the confrontation with Lisa, I was left feeling completely lost. The betrayal cut deep, and I couldn't shake the images of her with those other guys. It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every corner of our house felt tainted by her lies and deceit. I spent hours just sitting in silence, trying to process everything. The anger was overwhelming at times. I'd go from wanting to scream at the top of my lungs to breaking down in tears. How could she do this to me? To us? We had built a life together, shared dreams, and now it all seemed like a cruel joke. Lisa, on the other hand, was trying to act like everything could go back to normal. She apologized repeatedly, swearing she still loved me and wanted to make things right. But her words felt hollow. Every time she spoke, it was like salt in the wound. I couldn't bring myself to trust her, not after what she had done. One night, I decided to take a drive, hoping the solitude would help clear my mind. I ended up at a small park where Lisa and I used to go when we first started dating. Sitting on a bench, memories of happier times flooded back. We used to laugh and talk for hours, planning our future and dreaming of the life we'd build together. It was hard to reconcile those memories with the reality of who she had become. I thought about our wedding day, the promises we made to each other. How could everything fall apart so easily? Was there something I could have done differently? Was it my fault she strayed? The self-doubt crept in, gnawing at my already fragile heart. Friends and family started reaching out, sensing something was wrong. I didn't have the strength to tell them the whole story, so I kept things vague. But even their well-meaning support felt like a burden. I couldn't handle the pity or the questions. Back at home, Lisa's behavior became increasingly erratic. She went from being overly apologetic to angry and defensive. One moment she'd be begging for forgiveness, and the next she'd be accusing me of pushing her away. It was a roller coaster of emotions, and I was barely holding on. One particularly bad night, she snapped. "You're not perfect either, Jeff," she screamed. "You've ignored me for years. Always more interested in your work than in me. What did you expect?" Her words hit hard. Maybe I had been distant. Maybe I had taken her for granted. But did that justify her betrayal? I didn't think so. Still, the guilt started to eat at me. Was I partly to blame for driving her into the arms of those other men? I knew I needed help, someone to talk to who could help me make sense of everything. So I reached out to a therapist, hoping they could guide me through this mess. The first session was tough, but it felt good to unload everything. The therapist helped me see that while I might have made mistakes, Lisa's actions were her own choices. She could have communicated, sought help, anything but what she did. As the days passed, I started to find a bit of clarity. The pain was still there, but I knew I had to take steps to move forward. The trust was gone, and without it, our marriage was just a hollow shell. It was time to make a decision about my future, with or without Lisa. After the confrontation and the emotional turmoil that followed, I realized that staying with Lisa was not an option. The trust was shattered, and I couldn't see any way to rebuild it. Every time I looked at her, all I could see was the betrayal. I couldn't live like that. It wasn't fair to either of us. I scheduled another session with my therapist to talk through my decision. They helped me see that ending the marriage didn't mean I was a failure. It meant I was choosing to respect myself and my needs. It was about reclaiming my life and my happiness. One evening, I sat Lisa down for a serious talk. "Lisa, we need to have an honest conversation about where we go from here," I started. She looked at me with a mix of hope and fear. "Jeff, I know I've messed up, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. I took a deep breath. "Lisa, I've thought long and hard about this. I've talked to a therapist and I've done a lot of soul searching. I can't get past what you did. The trust is gone, and without it, there's no foundation for our marriage. I've decided to file for divorce." Her face crumpled, and she started to cry. "Please, Jeff, don't do this. We can work through this. I'll go to therapy. We can go together. We can fix this," she pleaded. "It's too late, Lisa," I said gently but firmly. "This isn't something we can fix. I need to move on with my life, and so do you. I think it's best for both of us if we end things now." She continued to cry and begged me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. It was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, but I knew it was the right decision. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork and emotional conversations. We started the process of dividing our assets and figuring out the logistics of our separation. It was painful, but each step brought a little more clarity and a little more peace. Friends and family were shocked when they heard the news. Some were supportive, while others couldn't believe it was happening. But I knew I had made the right choice for myself. Through it all, I continued to see my therapist, who helped me navigate the roller coaster of emotions. I learned to forgive myself for any mistakes I might have made in the marriage, and to understand that Lisa's choices were her own. One day, as I was packing up my things to move into a new apartment, I found an old photo of Lisa and me on our wedding day. We looked so happy, so full of hope for the future. I felt a pang of sadness, but also a sense of closure. That chapter of my life was over, and it was time to start a new one. The divorce was finalized a few months later. It was bittersweet, but it also felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I could finally breathe again. In the end, I realized that sometimes things fall apart so better things can fall together. I learned a lot about myself, about love, and about what I deserve in a relationship. And while the journey was painful, it also made me stronger. Thank you all for listening and for your support. It's been a tough ride, but I'm looking forward to what the future holds.